wanted to follow up my last author recommendation, which was Taking Fisher, with an author recommendation of an author I think is maybe less well known, and this is Jacquelyn Benson, for example, with her London Charismatics series. I think this is a series which is complete. There are 4 books plus 2 novellas. I've read the first 2 of the 4, but I am really enjoying them and plan to keep going. She also has another series which is still in progress, and that is the Raiders of the Arcana series. I'll show you her website if you can see this a little bit. So, Raiders of the Arcana plus the London Charismatics. And her website is just hername.com, Jacquelyn with a Y, JACQUEYUELYNBENSON.com. This is a mini spoiler alert about the Raiders of the Arcana series. So don't keep going if you don't want to hear a little bit of detail about that. Plus, maybe I called it the Arcane Shadows series at some point. I don't know why, but anyways, it's Raiders of the Arcana. The Raiders of the Arcana series are more sort of strict adventure novels, I want to say, set in an alternative historic past. For the time being, we have been a little bit in Europe, and then we were a little bit in South America, then Egypt, then India, and I think the next story is going to take place in Korea. So these are definitely sort of, how can I say, like Indiana Jones-esque, but with the female main character who is probably more like Marcus Brody to a certain extent in character, but at the same time very gung-ho and will just, launch herself into danger sort of just by conviction without necessarily thinking about it a whole lot. And then, of course, the cast of supporting characters to help get her out of the scrapes that she is continually getting into. However, these are not necessarily standalone adventures. There's a thread going through all of them so far, and the characters show up again and again. The sort of main antagonists, the main villains, they show up every single time. But the relationship with the main character and the villains is quite interesting because it's a little complex. It's not just like, we want to destroy each other. No, there is some entanglement involved there. So yes, there is an overall story arc connecting all of the books, even though there are also sort of standalone adventures within each book. Again, sort of like the Indiana Jones in that, he's constantly sort of battling the same forces in a way, just in slightly different forms every single time. In his case, it's the Nazis. In the case of this book series, it's a mysterious group of people who, similar to the Nazis, they try to collect powerful objects in order to further their own ends, which are basically to acquire power, to try to control others. And our main character, with her cohort, they are trying to prevent this from happening. So yeah, these are quite fun books. I'm enjoying them. And then the other series, the London Charismatics, this also is a historical alternative fantasy set in London, but in a different universe and sort of in a darker universe. The overall tone of these books is darker And both series have magic or supernatural forces, but in different ways. So I wouldn't necessarily have known that the two series are by the same author because their styles are quite distinct. I knew because I deliberately went out and looked for works by this author. But just to say, it's not just the same thing. And maybe you could like one series and not like the other one, for example. This series also is following a main female character, but again with a whole entourage, which is equally important. And I don't know why, but the vibe that this series is giving me is kind of like that television show, The Sanctuary, that starred Amanda Tapping from Stargate, the TV show, if anyone remembers that. And I don't know why necessarily, because in terms of plot, it's not the same. But maybe just in terms of, yeah, the overall sort of slightly melancholic atmosphere to it. And we never really get the idea that the people are going to succeed. In fact, our main characters, they seem to be up against forces which are much stronger than their collective power, and they definitely seem like the underdogs, and they're fighting a losing battle, essentially, it seems like. Whereas in the other series, I don't know, we feel fairly certain that they're going to come out on top. We don't know how, but there's just more like a plucky type energy. Whereas with the London Charismatics, I don't know, they're definitely more tortured, and then there are things that happen which are darker, and it's clear early on that not all of the characters are going to be safe all of the time, and things like that. So, anyhow, I just wanted to give a little bit of attention to this author who is new to me. I mainly discovered her about 6 months ago, and to just share and talk about a person who maybe needs a little bit more exposure. I discovered her thanks to Olivia Atwater, who is another author, which I would love to talk about. Another author I recommend, also with her husband, Nicholas Atwater. They have worked separately, and then they have some collaborations. Anyhow, I will talk about that in a future video, but I receive Olivia Atwater's newsletter, and she regularly gives recommendations for other authors, and this is one that I discovered thanks to that, and don't regret at all. So I highly recommend this author and those two book series, and also I suggest really going to her website because you can check out her Kickstarter campaign, which is now happening, to fund new editions of the Raiders of the Arcana series with fun 80s style bodice ripper type covers. Recommend.